Good morning, Colonel, and welcome to Guy Talk. Thanks for being on with us today. We want to talk about your career, a little bit about Iran. But first of all, I want to give everybody a little bit of your background, and I'm going to try to condense it because, well, quite frankly, your bio is longer than our talking points, which I think is quite an accomplishment. One of the first things that one of the first things that got me excited about interviewing you was your tours in Vietnam. You were a platoon leader or a patrol leader?
A platoon leader.
Platoon leader.
As a lieutenant. And actually, I was platoon leader in 3 different platoons. Started in Bravo Company, became the recon platoon leader, and then was switched out to go to Charlie Company. They wanted to make me a company XO, but I had a company commander in Charlie Company that wanted me as a platoon leader again, so I did that.
Hold on, Colonel. This is my part. This is where I get to introduce you. You don't get to introduce yourself. That felt pretty good from an enlisted guy telling a colonel to settle down.
Okay.
Well, and to expound on that, we were talking earlier, and I believe that out of that 1 year with those 3 different platoons, you lost a lot of other platoon leaders over there, and you were one of the few that made it all the way through on that tour. Am I correct?
I'm the only platoon leader that finished the year on the line. We lost at least 8 platoon leaders, KIA. I don't know how many more wounded, but at the end of the year, I was the only one that was still there. And the platoon I was in at the end of the year, there was only one other soldier who had arrived with the division in December of '67. Everyone else had been KIA or WIA. So it was a survival deal.
So all the attrition rates that we heard way back when, I mean, I went in '75, so I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But we would hear that patrol leaders or platoon leaders, lieutenants, so forth, didn't last long over there, and you're an anomaly, which is one of the other reasons I wanted to get you on.
Remember, 1968 was the year of the Big Tet.
Right.
And that was the year of most casualties. And it turned out the 3rd Brigade was being used as a fire brigade because 1st and 2nd Brigade were up north. 1st had already arrived a few years before when they deployed the division in December of '67. 2nd Brigade went up there, and they were under the control of the division headquarters, but 3rd Brigade was down south, and they were being used by Saigon as a reaction force. So we went where the action was.
Well, just to cut through your career a little bit more, and then we'll get into that. You got back from Vietnam. You went to your advanced course, also ended up in Ranger School, and became Distinguished Honor Grad, which is quite an accomplishment as well.
Actually,
and hence the name Ranger Roach.
Yeah, hence, well, after I graduated from Ranger School, I knew I was assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia, but I didn't know where. And somebody comes up to me at the graduation and says, report to the department director, who was David E. Grange, who had been my battalion commander, one of my battalion commanders, an excellent battalion commander in Vietnam. I reported to him, and he said, Roach, you're working for me. That was my news that I was assigned to the Ranger Department. And you're going to be the TAC officer for the next class, which was kind of, it starts in like 4 days. Go buy a beret. The Rangers, one of the few organizations wearing a beret back then. Everywhere I went in the Ranger Department, instructors would look at me and say, shit, you're Ranger Roach from the last class. Yeah. And I resisted the name for a little while, but it stuck.
So you went from student to the burning bush real quick.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And then when did you end up getting into Special Forces?
Okay. I was in the Ranger Department for almost 4 years. And I was working full-time during the day. But one of the advantages of being the senior TAC and then the coordinator of instruction was that I was at Fort Benning and I could go to night school because I did not have a college degree at this point. And I realized in the early 70s, if I didn't get a college degree, I was not going to stay in the Army. That was the way it worked. So I was working. In 1974, they organized the first Ranger Battalion. I volunteered to be part of it, but the guy that was the battalion commander had his choice. Chief of Staff of the Army said, you can take whoever you want. And he picked good people he knew. He didn't know me. So I didn't get picked.
So the distinguished honor grad from your class.
No, I was the honor graduate.
Oh,
I was
honor
the honor
grad.
graduate.
Okay.
The distinguished honor graduate was a good friend of mine, Sam Thompson, who was a first lieutenant and had prior service before he went to OCS and got a commission. But I'm very proud of that. But that had to do with the fact that when you're going through Ranger School, the vast majority of other students are lieutenants. They've gone through their OBC, Officer Basic Course, and now they're going to be go to Ranger School to try to get ready for the future. Well, I already had 2 years of on-the-ground experience in Vietnam, and I think I was much better prepared than all those lieutenants. So
Right.
I was proud to be an honor graduate, but I'm proud that Sam Thompson was the distinguished honor graduate. He was a super guy.
I have no doubt. Sir. So you did. So you weren't going to Ranger Battalion. Is that when you decided that you were going to try to go to the Special Forces?
Well, when I couldn't get into the Ranger Regiment, whatever, that's when I volunteered for Special Forces. And as it turns out, I think I probably got to do more in Special Forces than I would have in the Ranger Battalions. Ranger Battalions are held for big operations, and they do a lot of training, and they work hard. But Special Forces are sent in small packets to different places to do work. And so I was in Special Forces, and I got to do that.
So there's no regrets with that. You were more interested
looking back
in the real world stuff.
Yeah, looking back at, I think it worked to my advantage.
I didn't go to Ranger School, but I went to Recondo School, and I got to the 82nd Airborne. I think it was in November of '75, and the lieutenant told me I was going to Recondo School, which I kind of wasn't sure if I wanted to or not, but learned so much. I mean, I learned how to patrol was a leadership thing. I came from the intel background at that time. I had no idea how to do infantry stuff and patrol. And a general friend of mine's son just got his EIB, and I told the story that the ranger instructor was given the instructions and using that knife hand and going at the patrol leader, and I'm standing there with my finger up my nose, looking off, trying to catch a nap. And he turned and says, he said, do you understand the situation? He goes, and the guy said, yes, Ranger Sergeant. He goes, turned to me and says, no, you were the patrol leader. And I went, oh my God. And I ended up looking for somebody with an EIB and said, you're my APL. What are we going to do? And I was one of the 23 out of 83 that passed, which I owe that guy still.
Well, and something I like very much about your short story there is that critical part of leadership is getting everyone to work together. And when you recognize someone else has some ability they can help, I think that you're doing yourself a great favor, yourself
a lot of
and
fear
the organization. So, yeah.
There's a lot of fear.
Yeah. I was an honor graduate from, by the way, one of the things I did in the Ranger Department, my day job, we were just going to task, condition, and standards at that time in the Army. And the Ranger Department was trying to reduce their grading structure to that also. And it seemed like once a month I was in a meeting going over, because what the Mountain Ranger Camp recommended, what Benning recommended, and what Florida recommended, they were parallel, but there were some differences, had to be worked out. So we argued over that stuff it seemed like every week for 3 years. So I went after Ranger, I went for 1 year to St. Martin's College to get a college degree. And by the way, I found that it was a good college, good people, but your experience in real life is also a great teacher.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Special Forces training and they're starting to do small unit tactics, well, shit, I've been arguing that stuff for the last 3 years. So that gave me a big advantage. Special Forces training, the class is about 1/3 captains and 2/3 lieutenants. So I'm still kind of way ahead of the mean as far as experience. And that's, I think I was an undergraduate. I'm proud I was, but you got to look at the preparation.
Now, you said that you were, when you went to Special Forces, 1/3 were captains and 2/3 were lieutenants.
Yes.
Okay,
And most
so
were from Fort Bragg. 82nd seemed to provide a steady flow of lieutenants coming into Special Forces.
I believe I was in the first mixed officer enlisted Special Forces class. At least that's what I was told. I think that was in 1982.
We didn't.
So
we
it's probably one of the reasons I got through it. They probably watered it down for the officers. So.
And I don't think so. I don't think so.
And I think that was a direct result from that lady was she a captain that wanted to go be a Green Beret, and they let her go. And at the time, the officers were going through more of a gentleman's course than through the mud stuff. And they said, okay, since we can't discriminate, everybody goes through it now, officers and enlisted. And if you can make it, you make it, which I guess is a good thing.
When I went through Special Forces training in 1976, there was an element of stress. Not as much as Ranger School, but there was an element of stress. But like I said, I was well prepared for it.
Yeah, I was pretty prepared for the SFQC as well. But one of the major things I did wrong was I was running. I should have been rucking. Should have been rucking a lot more. I remember when Colonel Howard would take us out on those rucks, the front of my legs were on fire, and it was just on fire, and my back of my legs were just fine. If we were running, I would have been good, but those rucks were killing me.
I only knew Howard at Fort Benning. I had just graduated from Ranger School. I'm a senior TAC. Howard was the head. He was in the airborne department. I can't remember, it was Tower Week or Ground Week. But he volunteered for Ranger School, and he came out, talked to me because I was a captain. He was 8 or 10 years older than me, but he wanted to talk to somebody who'd been through it. And I couldn't believe the shit that the Ranger cadre put him through. Yeah. But Bob Howard just smiled and did more push-ups.
He was a bad dude.
He was. He was absolutely. And you could screw with him all you want, but you weren't going to get him upset.
And I was living proof. I was a wise guy, E5 that was down there. And he would start talking. I think the first night we were in the Puzzle Palace, he got up on the stage and welcomed us there and said, "Men, can you throw a knife, make a stick in a tree? You better learn." And I'm sitting there rolling my eyes going, "Oh God, here we go." And just being a wise guy, that's who I am. So, but after I got through the course and listened to him and worked with him, just got his training and got to know him a little bit better and read his citation. Once I got back from phase 1, I was like, man, what an idiot you are. You were just in the presence of greatness, and you were once again a clown. Oh God, he was something else. So after you got through the Q course, where did you go?
I went to Germany, to SFTET Europe, Germany. At that time, there was a colonel headquarters and the 1st Battalion, the 10th Group, stationed in Bad Schultz, Germany. And it was a great tour. The Germans were friendly. I got to travel down to Italy for a few exercises, was in exercises in Germany. I was a team leader, and then I was a company commander there, and then I was the operations officer for SFTED Europe. I was there when Bo Baker died. Bo Baker was the SF Det Europe commander, and he had hurt his knee somehow, something to do with skiing. And so he was swimming trying as an exercise to try to recuperate. And one day in the pool, he had a heart attack and died. So, but he was a good commander and someone that people really liked. So it was a real shock when he went.
Yeah. So when you said you were with the first Det, you weren't with Det A?
No, Det A was up in Berlin. I was at the 1st Battalion, 10th Group, and I was in ODA 8. We had 12 ODAs at that time, 6 in each company, only 2 companies, and I was ODA 8, so I started in Bravo Company. So Vacheski was my company commander, who was a Eastern European guy and very excitable, but good man. He died a few years ago. He was the commander of the language training school, DLI, Defense Language Institute.
In Monterey?
Yep. But he was a good guy.
Well, it's hard not to be a good guy in Monterey. What a cushy job that must have been. Good for him.
I agree. That was his reward.
Yeah, probably. Tell me about, I don't want to keep jumping back and forth, but one of the main reasons that I wanted to talk to you is about Vietnam and what you did there. It amazed me. I got into the Army when they took the Mayaguez. Matter of fact, I was in basic training when the drill sergeants called us all over and told us that North Vietnam just took the Mayaguez and we're training you people to go get it back. And I was going like, what about the condos and the marinas that you were telling me about? Not to go back to Vietnam's, but it always fascinated me with the Vietnam veterans. And I served with many of them back in 75, 76 in the 82nd Airborne. So tell me, as an infantry officer over there, tell me some of the challenges and tell me some of the triumphs that you had.
Well, challenges is squad leaders and medics tend to try to go to people who are wounded. And what that causes many times is additional casualty, because wherever the wounded fell, that's probably in a field of fire. And as you go to him, you're going to be engaged also. When we started the year, each platoon had a medic, and the company had a medic. So there's 4 in each company. There were 4 companies, so there's 16, and the recon platoon had a medic, so that's 17. By the time June rolled around, June of 68, we were down to 1 medic per company. And it was because medics went to where the wounded were on the battlefield. And so we had to change SOP. This was something I didn't decide. First Sergeant Trent and Freddie Rankin, who was the company commander, decided this. Since we only have 1 medic in the company, the medic will stay with the company headquarters, which is normally behind the front lines, and the wounded will be brought to him for treatment because we can't afford to lose more.
Right.
But we also lost a lot of sergeants, young sergeants, because they felt a personal responsibility for their soldiers. And when a soldier went down, same type of thing, they're trying to go up there and put a first aid dressing on. No, don't do that. If you can get to him, drag him back behind some cover. And it took us a while to learn and understand that. One of the challenges in the second part of the year was we had run out of sergeants. The platoon that I was in before I left last few months, I only had 1 sergeant. He had arrived in country as a private and gotten promoted. He was a good man, but he didn't have very much formal training. But he had learned a lot and did a good job. When I came back from my second tour, the BNOC, I'm not sure that's the term they used back then, but the Army had started to turn out sergeants at Fort Benning. And you went through a course after basic and AIT, you went through another course 10 or 12 weeks long, and you came out as a sergeant.
Shake and bake?
Excuse me?
Did they call it shake and bake?
Yes, they did. And they weren't as good as an experienced sergeant with 5-6 years of service, but they're a hell of a lot better than just having soldiers there who have been through basic training, AIT, and here you are. The second year I got there, in the first year, my first battalion commander was David E. Grange, and he was a super guy, and he came out, spent some time on the ground, spent a few nights on the ground with different companies just to see what's going on and kind of get a feel for the flow. The second year I got there, by the way, there's only 6 months between my first, second tour. And the reason for that was when I came back, I got married, signed to Fort Dix. I hated Fort Dix. It was a basic, or it was an AIT training, but for some logistical parts that I didn't understand. I realized that I was going back after a year. That was the normal flow. You're an infantry officer, year of the States, year back. So I liked Fort Dix so much, I volunteered to go back early. My wife was not pleased.
Is she still with you, I hope?
She is. Yes,
oh, awesome.
yes. But at any rate, so I went back and I got there, spent a few weeks in the battalion headquarters in the Tactical Operations Center on Fire Base Ripcord, which got attacked later. But and then we got a new battalion commander who was really a super guy. He was airborne, was his call sign. And he was a guy that also went out and saw the troops in the field and talked to officers on the ground. And that kind of forward leadership made a big positive difference. He was later killed trying to he was in a or Observation Helicopter 6, OH-6. And they came across, they saw an individual on the ground, thought he might know something, but actually he was armed with an AK-47, but that was at his feet, so it was out of sight. And they pulled down to try to capture him. That was the battalion commander told the pilot, pulled down to try to capture him. When they got low enough, this guy reaches down, gets his AK-47 and a burst of whatever, and previously wounds the battalion commander, wounded the pilot, but not bad enough. The pilot could fly back. He was only 10 minutes from the base. And the battalion commander died of his wounds. But he was a super guy. The guy that followed him was okay, but he wasn't as good a commander. But at any rate. So
it sounds like part of the problem that it sounds like you had in the beginning was maintaining that brain trust in your NCOs and squad leaders that were trying to get to the wounded, and then the medics who, they were like, you got to go fetch, and then they were getting
yes,
whacked as well.
Yes, I'm glad I explained it well. You understand?
Well, yeah. Somebody that wasn't there would never have known that. Somebody like I wasn't there, so to know that prior to going in would be a hell of a lot easier knowing that than not knowing it going in. So it takes time and experience to acquire that knowledge, and then to lose that brain trust is pretty tough. Then to keep leading.
So. The second year, we had started to get those shake and bakes. The ones that came through Fort Benning for an additional 2-month course, I think was learning to be an NCO. And they learned a lot, and they were a hell of a lot better than just a straight soldier. But they still weren't as good as an experienced NCO. They became experienced NCOs. And my second tour, many more survived. So we had engagements my second tour, but the first tour was really, really tough.
When I went through the Q course, we had a sergeant first class in there by name of Balog, and he was a shake and bake. He got up at when we were out on the range, um, shooting the mortars, I believe at the time, and he got up and gave a little powwow about that he was a shake and bake, that he before we went to Vietnam and stuff, and he told a little story about um, moving into a village and his lack of experience. He kind of told a funny story, and he said that they had spider holes, and that they would get down these spider holes, and he thought that he saw fire coming out of a spider hole, and he made his way over to the spider hole and he dropped a grenade in it, and it turned out to be a cesspool that they had there, and he blew the shit up literally all over all his guys, and that's how he got to be so well liked amongst that.
No shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his name was Sergeant First. I believe he retired to Sergeant Major Balog.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a shake and bake too. He was a pretty good guy.
An advantage that we have that I didn't realize, certainly before I was in the military, and I didn't realize how important it was till I served in the Middle East, is that we're part of a Christian culture. Christian culture takes care of one another.
Mm-hmm.
We all don't live up to that, but that's kind of the ideal. The Muslim world, that is not the ideal. That is just kind of off, not their focus. Right. So when I served later, I served in, when I was retired from the military, and I was serving as a hired gun. I spent some time in Afghanistan, and something that came out every week in the newspaper, saying, local newspaper, they had somebody that was translate different articles, and we would to English, and we would get this would be passed out among the embassy, and there were always stories about officers. These are Afghani officers being killed by one of their troops, or whatever. Matter of fact, there was a U.S. Army Major General Green who was killed, on a visit to Kabul, and it turns out that he was not the target. The Afghani senior officer, I think he was a colonel, was the target. Unfortunately, he was standing too close and he got hit by the fire.
Wrong place, wrong time, huh?
But this was a terrible problem in Afghanistan. I suspect in other countries, other countries in the Middle East, Muslims, I think, suffer from the same problem because the superiors treat the people very poorly, treat their troops very poorly. There's assassinations, and it's just somehow it's acceptable, or it's almost expected. But anyway.
Yeah, I experienced something similar when we were in Baghdad. I was over there with Blackwater, and I ran a team house over there for him a couple of times. And we had Iraqis that worked in the house. They cooked, they cleaned the house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in 2005, the Minister of Interior was tossing, the Iraqis out of the green zone, and they would have been killed within 36 hours. No ifs, buts, or maybes. And I actually got an appointment to see the Minister of Interior to not to plead for them because he didn't care, like you said. I knew that. I understood that. But to tell him that my job was to get people into that country to protect him and the other VIPs there. And if my operation was impacted by that, I wouldn't be able to do my job. These people ensure that I'm able to do my job. And he let them stay, and they lived. As a matter of fact, I still hear from Rafid every so often from over there. So that's a good sign. But I understand what you're saying. But other Americans don't. So please.
Now,
continue.
I was in Kabul. We would go to meetings maybe weekly with different Afghani organization, brigade headquarters, police, other type of stuff. And I remember after the second meeting, I talked to the other three younger U.S. officials. I was a contractor, they were all officials. When we go to talk to these guys, we all need to sit on the same side of the table. And said, why? I said, well, I'm not worried about the guy we're talking to. I'm worried about somebody busting in to kill him. And if we're on the opposite sides of the table and we're trying to defend ourselves, well, we're in one another's sight picture. So it's better if we're all on one side of the table. We'll pray nothing happens, but if it does, we'll be able to react better.
Right. Good point. Yeah.
Good
point. So you were interacting with a lot of local officials and so forth?
Well, we were in the Kabul, and we were interacting with police and military, and we're trying to help them, trying to give them training, trying to give them advice. I only spent 4 months there, and they decided they were going through a downscaling of the number of people, and most of the contractors like me said, this is your last trip, you're not coming back. Okay, not a problem.
What was that, Colonel?
It was 96, 97, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So, yeah. No, it was later than that. It was 2005, maybe, because I retired in 95, spent 3 years in the UAE, United Arab Emirates.
So you were there
producing training for them that they never used.
So you were there in support of Enduring Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom?
No, when I was in the UAE.
In the UAE. Sorry,
that was something that they decided they needed to have training. They imported retired military from Britain and from the United States. And terrible problems in the organization because we were told to write this training, but then none of the unit commanders would use the training. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, wait a minute, well then, why are you paying these guys to produce this training? But it's another example of kind of that they don't have organizations that work well together, and the idea of take care of one another, which I think is the foundation of our success, they don't have. So
I once read somewhere that when Europe started to industrialize, I don't know, a couple thousand, 1,000 years, 1,700 years ago, 1,300 years ago, whatever it was, when they were trying to industrialize, the Muslim world didn't want to do that. They wanted to stay mom and pop shop, and I guess that's part of that cultural thing that's been ingrained in them even back then. That they didn't come together to work as a collective as well as maybe we do.
I teach English as a second language, and I tell my students, who are all from Latin America, that we in the United States are very, very lucky. The world today has lots of capability, transportation capabilities, and there are a lot of refugees both in the United States and in Europe. In the United States, the people that come, immigrants here, come from Latin America, which is a Christian culture. The immigrants that are coming to Europe mostly are Muslims. They're not a Christian culture. And they're already having problems. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think the problems are going to continue to get worse in Europe because they don't have that glue of you got to help one another. If I help you, then tomorrow I'll need help. You'll be willing to help me.
Right. I think they're starting, from what I'm reading, they're starting to wake up a little bit with that. I think they're recognizing. I mean, Britain right now is going through a kind of a little bit of a revolt about what's been happening to them for way too long. I don't know how they were able to, or why they tolerated, to be honest with you, that long. I think when I was in Greece to do. We did port security there for the 2004 Greek Olympics, mm-hmm. And so we were at the seaports. We did 9 of them, and we saw daily um, uh, illegal aliens trying to smuggle in containers, walking by. As a matter of fact, I think I was in Saloniki, and I was standing there talking to a police officer, and a guy walked by and bumped my arm, which kind of like ticked me off a little bit. I turned around like who's this? And there was a chain gang walking by. And I asked the police officer who it was, and he said that they found them in a container. There was like 12 of them in a container, and they were bringing them in to process them to send them back. But they were all coming from the Muslim world. They're all coming from the East. So trying to get into Europe. So it's been going on for a long time.
Yes.
This is not a current sensation. It's been happening for quite a while.
No, and although they recognize, I think, that they want something different, they're not willing to change. So they're kind of stuck.
Well, we see that here, and we see it here, where they'll come here, and the next thing you know, they're having calls for prayer. They're stopping traffic, which in all my time, overseas, I never saw them stop traffic for prayer, but they're doing it here, and that is to be in your face.
Yes.
That is in your face. We're going to do this, and the American people and I think the Europeans are starting to wake up and understand that.
I think it's going to be a big struggle. I hope it's not. I'm not hoping for anything, but I'm just saying they are dedicated from the time that I think that they are from children. They're trained that you need to transform the world. You need to convert the world to our perspective. And so with some of those people, they take it very seriously, and we're living with the results of it. Europe is living with more of the results of it.
Yeah, they're a little bit closer to it. I mean, we still do have an ocean. However, we also have political entities that want to bring them in mass numbers and then put them into enclaves so they can develop political clout here. And I don't mean to get political, but it is a fact.
The enclaves, I think, is a very bad idea if you're trying to help them integrate into Western society. But I'm sure that there are some people that want to keep it in enclave because they want to keep that cohesion on what they were born with. But it's right now we have a Muslim who is the mayor of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like, how did that happen? I'm not quite sure. I didn't follow that politically, how all that evolved, but I know he was elected. How's that going to come out? Don't know. But
I don't either. To talk about current events today, we're talking about the Muslim world. What are your thoughts on Iran?
Presidents all the way back to Carter said that something needed to change, but nobody did anything to change it until President Trump. I think that if he hadn't acted, they're working very hard to try to develop nuclear weapons, and I'm sure eventually they would develop nuclear weapons if they had the time and the space to do it. And once they have the nuclear weapons, I'm pretty sure they're going to blackmail the West, say, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's painful, but I'm glad that Trump has acted. And hopefully all the other Muslim countries will look at it and say, well, shit, we don't want to be in this type of fight. So maybe we'll just leave this alone. But
it's my understanding that and I'm not an Islamic scholar or anything, but it's my understanding that the Iranians believe that there were 13 imams, and that the 13th one is gone. That they want to bring them back. kind of similar like to Christ coming back for Christians. The stories parallel quite a bit there, but that they want to bring this 13th back. And I just heard the other day that the other 12 were considered like chaos, mischievous, and kind of out of control, where the 13th one was the one who kind of was the calm one that calmed those other 12 down. And I just heard it online, but it kind of makes sense when you see them starting to toss ballistic missiles at their neighbors who were refused to engage. That it kind of goes with that theory that the chaos from those Amans in Iran were just trying to get a regional, perhaps maybe even global war going in order to bring back that 13th Aman. Do you see any similarities there?
Well, if Trump hadn't done something, they would have done something sooner or later. I don't know if it had been this year or not.
Right.
But as soon as they had the power, they would have, I don't know if they would attack or they would just demand a series of changes that made Muslim world superior, because their perception, Muslim world, is superior to the West. But all of us, I remember when I was in Catholic grade school, I was taught that the world started about 5,000 years before Christ, and that was it. Well, since that time, there's been a tremendous amount of study and determined, human life goes back a few 100,000 years. Amazing. And for most of that 200,000 years, we have lived in small tribes of 150 or less. Robin Dunbar, who is a British paleontologist, anthropologist, comes up with a number, and it's based on our brain size compared to other apes and monkeys. He found the relationship between brain size and size of group. And based on that, humans, he said, Dunbar's number, we fit into a social structure of about 130. Well, since the days of the Romans, military organization companies have been 130 to 150.
Coincidence?
So,
yeah, was it a coincidence? I don't know. Was it?
Yeah. So the reality we're living through right now is, although we are equipped to deal with 130 to 150 people, we live in a world of strangers. I live 3 miles from the closest supermarket. It's a good supermarket. But I go there 2 or 3 times a week. And 2 times in the last year, I've met somebody there that I recognized. We live in a sea of strangers. Right. And that's creating, I think that's one of the reasons for a lot of our frustrations and for conflicts, is that we don't see the people as related to us. We don't understand that they need to be part of the ones we take care of. And of course,
I think it's a lot of greed and power too. And I think that there's conflicts of cultures, but greed and power. I mean, if you're looking at Russia, Ukraine, I think it's a little bit of greed and power, and I think it's about access to warm water ports there and so forth. But what do you think Iran meant to China? Because I think that there's something even greater going on right now. Venezuela was such a unbelievable operation that the U.S. Pulled off, and I started learning more about what was going on in Venezuela. I knew that Hezbollah was on Margarita Island, but I had no idea the Lebanese have been in there for over 50 years, and actually have an economic zone down there. I didn't know that that rare earth minerals were being kind of like recategorized and shoved out the back door through Colombia to China. And you got oil going to out of Venezuela to China, who doesn't produce their own, and now you have Iran, which is one of the biggest supplier of oil for China. Do you think there's like any connection there? I mean, and on top of that, we have President Trump going to China to meet with Xi in about 2-3 weeks.
Yep.
So, I mean, what do you think you think there's any dynamics there?
Well, I think that in addition to the frustration between the West and Islam, there's also the fight that goes on between communist world and the West, which is Europe and the United States. And China and Russia are doing anything they can to create problems. And part of that is the drug war. It turns out the drug war seems to have had one of their sponsors were China and Russia, because they're creating problems for the United States. Whatever means you can use, you'll use. And they've been doing that. Although I realize that the guys on those boats that are being destroyed down in the Caribbean and in the Pacific are probably just poor campesinos. And the boat crews I'm talking about, they're poor campesinos looking for a way to earn money to support their families. But they're creating tremendous problems because they're getting drugs, lethal drugs, into the United States, which are great problems for us. Of course, and this is a cultural problem we have a lot of people that want to use these drugs. And so they're taking advantage of what they see as a weakness. And the guys on the boats are just crews. They're poor campesinos. They're the ones that are getting killed. That is not going to make a big difference in the long run. Those guys being killed and the boats being destroyed, not going to be a big difference. Can you get back to the places that are shipping it? Well, Venezuela is one of the parts that was shipping it.
Yeah, so, I mean, you want to get to this the systemic problem, obviously, but I think that moving our Navy into that area, conducting those interdiction actions against those drug smugglers was also kind of a cover for what was about to happen in Venezuela.
Could be, we're talking about.
Now they're supposed to be shutting them down coming up through Mexico as well, but we shall see. Maybe that's for another conversation, sir.
We have a tremendous problem, and part of this problem goes back to Dunbar's number. It's hard to get focus because some people are focused on one thing, others focused on the other. So it's hard to get a focus, keep a focus. It seems to me Trump has been very effective at identifying serious problems and acting against them. And I'm grateful that we got that.
Yeah, I don't think he's timid at all to take action if he believes it's right, which I think is what is needed in any real leader.
Yeah, and so he's making things happen. There's no doubt that he's rather gruff and rather just kind of, shut up, I'm doing it, I got it.
I think he was on a team, sir.
He needs to be done.
I think he was on an A team first. I see his personality in the team room quite a bit.
There are people like that.
Yeah, but there are.
The advantage of an A team, you're small enough and you got the continuity. Normally, you got
way under 130. Way under 130.
Yeah, got the continuity to develop relationships and to understand one another. Right. But when you're first meeting another person, one of the things you try to do is figure out what's important to them. Figure out where you're aligned and where you're not aligned. That's right. Part of what's happening. But
well, sir, I appreciate you coming on the show. We've been talking about this for a while. I hope you enjoyed coming on and telling a little bit of your story. I'll let you know as soon as this is going to be released. And I
Okay.
hope to see you at breakfast sometime in the future.
Well, that would be just dandy. I would like that too.
Maybe we can
This
maybe we get
Saturday,
this
and I'm
show to
going
be played at the Smyrna Diner for us. What do you think?
Smyrna Diner. That's a good place. Yep.
All right, sir. I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks again.
Thanks for the invitation.
All right.
And hope you have a good day. And
You too, sir.
best
Thank
of
you.
luck.
Thank you.